Hey there, just a heads up, this episode of the Judo Science Podcast was created with help from AI. Some of the voices you'll hear are synthetic, but the ideas come from real research and real judo.
You know, I was looking up the etymology of judo this morning just to get my head in the right space.
Oh, yeah.
And it's kind of beautiful. It translates literally to the gentle way.
It sounds incredibly zen, doesn't it? Like water flowing around a rock.
Right, very flowy, very harmonious. But then I started reading this stack of research you sent over for our deep dive. And I have to say, gentle is about the last word I would use. The way of the exploding knee feels a little more accurate.
It is a bit of a marketing problem, isn't it? When you actually look at the data, the gentle way is surprisingly brutal.
Brutal is the word.
We have some stats here that are frankly alarming. One study shows that about 79% of judokas,
So nearly 4 out of 5.
4 out of 5 practitioners, will suffer an injury that takes them out of training for more than 3 weeks.
That's almost everyone. I mean, if you're in a room with 5 black belts, 4 of them are walking around with a war story.
And usually that war story involves the knee, specifically the anterior cruciate ligament, the ACL.
The king of career-altering injuries. So that's our mission for this deep dive. We aren't just going to rattle off injury rates and scare everyone into taking up chess.
Yo.
We want to understand the why. And we've got a really interesting stack today. We're talking high-level biomechanics, gender-different studies that, go against everything you'd expect.
And even some psychological research on what happens to your identity when you can't fight anymore. We also have a fascinating look at a specific defensive adjustment.
A literal change in how you move.
Yeah, a change that could cut the force on your knee in half.
Plus, we're going to get into some real-world chaos with a case study from the Shintaro Higashi show about the nightmare of just getting a correct diagnosis.
Always a good goal to keep your ligaments attached.
Let's start with the mechanism, because when I think of an ACL tear, my mind goes straight to soccer or basketball.
Right. The classic non-contact injury.
Yeah. A player's running, they plant their foot to cut left, but their knee goes right and pop. Nobody even touched them.
That is the classic mechanism. It's all about braking and pivoting. But judo is a grappling sport, so the physics are entirely different.
It's contact-based.
It's overwhelmingly contact-based.
Yep.
A 2024 study we looked at found that 70.1% of ACL tears in judo come from direct contact.
So it's not just me stepping clumsily. It's the other person doing something to me.
Or the interaction between the two of you. The study identifies the primary culprit as dynamic knee valgus.
Okay, valgus. I hear that term in weightlifting sometimes, usually when people are squatting too heavy and their knees cave in. Is that what we're talking about?
That's exactly it. Ideally, your knees should track over your toes. In dynamic valgus, the hip rotates in, the foot stays planted, and the knee just collapses toward the midline.
That's already a bad position.
It is. Now imagine that, but with a 90-kilogram opponent pulling your upper body in the opposite direction or just falling directly onto the side of that leg.
So your leg is trapped in this knock-kneed position, and then extreme force is applied.
Precisely. The ligament just can't handle that kind of diagonal load. It's not designed for it.
And what's really interesting is that this isn't random, is it? There are specific moves that are basically ACL craps.
Yes. This was the part of the research that made me wince, too. A 2014 study by Prill and colleagues actually ranked the throws by danger level.
And sitting right at the top, the #1 offender is Uchi.
The Uchi, which is arguably the most beautiful throw in judo when it's done right.
For those not visualizing it, that's the inner thigh throw.
Yeah.
Right, you turn in, lift one leg high between their legs and kind of leverage them over.
Correct. But the Prill study found it accounted for nearly 46% of the ACL injuries in their data set.
46% for one technique.
It's a staggering number.
Why? Is it because you're hopping on one leg?
Think about the mechanics. You're the attacker, the tori. You plant your support leg, then you swing your other leg up to lift a heavy resisting opponent.
So your entire body weight plus their weight is on that one knee.
And you're rotating.
Violently.
If the opponent clamps down, meaning they drop their weight to resist, your upper body stops, but your foot is glued to the mat. The rotation has to go somewhere.
And it goes right into the knee. You're basically turning your own leg into a twisted fulcrum.
Exactly. You are torquing yourself. It's an internal failure caused by external resistance.
That makes a ton of sense. Tai-otoshi came up with a pretty high risk factor, too.
Tai-otoshi is fascinating. It's a hand technique, but it involves dropping low and blocking their legs with your own leg extended.
It's like a trip, but, way more aggressive.
Yes. And the study found that while fewer people use it as their main throw, when it is involved, the injury rate is disproportionately high.
It's more dangerous when it happens.
A risk factor of 2.44. The issue here is rigidity. You're creating a wall with your leg. If the opponent falls into the wall instead of over it,
The wall breaks.
and in this case, the wall is your knee joint.
We also have to talk about Osoto-gari, because Uchi seems to hurt the attacker, but Osoto seems like a nightmare for the person being thrown.
That's a crucial distinction. In Osoto-gari, the attacker reaps your leg, usually your weight-bearing leg, from the outside.
It's a direct assault on the knee. They're sweeping the leg you're standing on while pushing you backward.
If your foot gets stuck, it's pure valgus force. The knee just buckles inward instantly.
Okay, before we get to the solution, because I promise we do have one, I want to touch on the shoulder throw. It popped up, but it seemed different.
It is different. It causes a lot of injuries, sure, but mostly because it's a very common throw. The nature of the injury is what's different.
It's not the ligaments.
Not usually. The data showed about 70% of the knee injuries from it were contusions, bruises.
Because you're dropping down onto your knees to execute the throw.
Exactly. You drop to get under their center of gravity, so you bang your knees up, maybe get some bursitis, but you aren't torquing the ACL. It hurts, but it's not a season ender.
I think I'd take a bruise over a rupture any day of the week.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's pivot to something I found really counterintuitive. Usually when we cover sports science, there's a hard rule about ACLs and gender.
Right. In the general population and in sports like soccer or basketball, women are significantly more prone to ACL injuries.
We're talking like, what, 3 to 6 times more likely?
That's the range, yeah. And it's usually chalked up to anatomy, right? The Q angle, wider hips, hormonal cycles affecting ligaments.
That is the standard textbook teaching.
Mm-hmm.
But the study on elite judokas found nothing.
Nothing. No statistical difference. Men and women were blowing out their knees at almost exactly the same rate.
That is wild. Does judo somehow fix the anatomy?
No, anatomy is still anatomy. But the researchers suggest that judo basically overrides the physiological differences.
The violence equalizer theory.
Essentially. And soccer, a woman might tear her ACL making a cut because her hip mechanics put slightly more strain on the joint. But in judo,
A 100-kilo person falls on your leg.
and it doesn't matter how wide your hips are, the force is so catastrophic that it just eclipses those subtle anatomical differences.
The physics of the collision just doesn't care about your hormones.
Correct. But they didn't just leave it there. They put these athletes through a single-leg squat test to see if there were underlying movement issues.
And this is where the actionable advice starts to creep in.
It is. They just ask the athlete to stand on one leg, hands on hips, and squat down as far as they can comfortably. They're looking for control.
Does the knee wobble? Does the hip drop?
All of that. And how did the elite black belts do?
I have a feeling you're going to say not well.
Both men and women showed pretty terrible neuromuscular control, but specifically in their non-dominant leg.
The non-dominant leg. So if I'm right-handed, I throw with my right, which means I'm standing on my left.
Exactly. The support leg. It does all the heavy lifting of balancing, but it gets neglected in strength training because we focus on the power side.
And when they had to squat on that support leg?
The knee collapsed into valgus way too easily.
So the takeaway there is pretty clear. Stop skipping single leg day, specifically on your boring leg.
Absolutely. You need that support leg to be bulletproof.
Okay, let's get to the part I've been waiting for. The fix. We talked about Osoto-gari being the defender's nightmare, but there's a 2022 study that claims we can basically engineer the danger out of it.
This is a great piece of research. It's so practical. They compared 2 ways of defending against that outside leg reap.
Walk us through the traditional bad way first, the rigid chain defense.
Okay, so imagine someone comes in to sweep your leg. Your instinct, and what's often taught, is to plant your foot hard, lock your legs straight, and lean into them.
You become a statue. You're trying to be a wall again.
You're creating a rigid chain from your foot to your hip. The problem is, when they hit that rigid chain, the force has nowhere to go.
And they measured this.
They did. It's enough to strain or rupture the structure if the angle is just wrong. It's like taking a dry twig and trying to bend it.
It doesn't bend, it snaps.
Exactly.
Okay, so what is the solution? This modified defense reaction.
Think of it less like a twig and more like bamboo or a shock absorber. Instead of planting and blocking, the defender performs a step back. a yielding motion.
So as they attack, you actually give ground.
Just slightly. You unlock the knee and step back with the force. You aren't running away, you're just allowing the energy to dissipate.
And did that reduce the stress on the knee?
The numbers are huge. That simple adjustment dropped the torque from 58 Newton meters down to 31. That is the difference between walking home and being carried out on a stretcher.
And there was a bonus finding, right? About the muscles.
Yes. They measured muscle activation and found this yielding defense significantly increased hamstring activation.
Why does the hamstring matter here?
The hamstring is the ACL's best friend. When it contracts, it pulls the shin bone backward, preventing it from sliding forward, which is exactly the motion the ACL is there to prevent.
So you're not just lowering the force, you're engaging your body's natural armor.
That's a perfect way to put it.
It's such a perfect example of the gentle way actually working. You yield to overcome. But let's be real, sometimes you don't step back in time. The knee pops.
And that brings us to the side of injury that doesn't show up on an MRI, the emotional side.
This part of the research hit hard. They talk about judo not just being a hobby, but a monastic lifestyle.
That's the word. For so many of these athletes, the dojo is their community, their ethical framework. The athletes who coped best were the ones who treated their rehab as a new form of judo. They took the discipline, the patience, the strategy, and applied it to leg lifts.
The injury becomes the opponent.
A very tough opponent. This study also highlights this silent struggle, the isolation, the fear of re-injury, feeling like you're being left behind.
So, pulling this all together, the gentle way is a bit of a misnomer. It's a machine for generating torque.
It is. The mechanics of moves like Uchi and that rigid defense against Osoto-gari place immense stress on the knee. And that stress doesn't care if you're male or female.
But we aren't helpless. We can change our software. We can learn to yield instead of blocking. We can bulletproof that non-dominant leg.
And we can change our mindset about the medical process. Treat the diagnosis and rehab with the same strategy you bring to a match. Don't just accept the first opinion.
It leaves me with a thought about the evolution of the sport. We hold on to these traditional techniques like that hard block because that's how it's always been done. But if the data says it's snapping our ligaments...
Maybe it's time for an update.
It's a provocative question, isn't it? Is the ultimate mastery of judo throwing the opponent? Or is it adapting the art so you can actually practice it for a lifetime without falling apart?
Maybe the gentle way isn't about how you throw, but how you survive.
I like that. Something to think about next time you're on the mats.
Next time on the Judo Science Podcast, episode 36, judo grip fighting is slowly destroying your hands and what the science says about it.